Landlord tried to evict me unfairly, so I legally made his life a living hell. Hey Reddit, it's Llewellyn, and I've got a story for you that you won't believe. This all started about a year ago. I had been living in this quaint little apartment complex for about 3 years. The place was nothing fancy, but it was home. My landlord Gareth was a decent enough guy at first, but things took a turn when he sold the property to a new owner named Brynmore. Brynmore was a nightmare. He was this pompous prick who thought he could walk all over his tenants. It wasn't long before we started getting complaints about everything. The guy was obsessed with improving the property, which basically meant making our lives hell. He wanted higher rent, fancier amenities, and to kick out anyone who couldn't keep up with his bullshit demands. One evening, I came home to find an eviction notice taped to my door. My heart sank. I hadn't done anything wrong. I paid my rent on time, kept the place clean, and even helped out my neighbors when they needed it. The notice claimed I was being evicted for violating the lease terms, but it didn't specify how. I knew this was Brynmore's doing, so I decided to confront him. Brynmore, what the hell is this about? I asked, holding up the notice. You're being evicted for breaching your lease, he replied with a smug grin. Breaching how? I haven't done anything wrong. I was furious. Doesn't matter. You've got 30 days to pack your shit and get out, he said, walking away like he owned the world. I wasn't going to take this lying down. I decided to fight back, legally. I spent the next few days gathering evidence. I went through my lease with a fine-tooth comb and documented every interaction I had with Brynmore. I also talked to my neighbors, and it turned out I wasn't the only one getting these bullshit eviction notices. It seemed Brynmore was trying to clear out the old tenants to bring in new ones at higher rates. One of my neighbors, a sweet old lady named Seren, was in tears when I knocked on her door. She'd lived there for over 20 years, and the thought of moving at her age was breaking her heart. I knew I had to do something, not just for myself, but for everyone else too. I reached out to a local tenants' rights organization and got in touch with a lawyer named Reese. He was a godsend. Reese took one look at the eviction notice and shook his head. This is illegal as hell, he said. Brynmore can't just evict you without a valid reason. We started compiling all the evidence. Reese advised me to document every interaction with Brynmore from now on. I bought a small recorder and kept it in my pocket whenever I was around him. The plan was to catch him admitting to his shady tactics. Meanwhile, I rallied the other tenants. We had a meeting in my apartment, and I laid out the plan. We were going to fight this together. We all agreed to stand up to Brynmore and not let him bully us out of our homes. The first step was to file a formal complaint with the housing authority. Reese helped us with the paperwork, and we submitted it along with all the evidence we'd gathered. Brynmore was livid when he found out. He tried to intimidate us, but we stood our ground. One day, he cornered me in the hallway. You think you're clever, don't you, Llewellyn? He sneered. This little rebellion of yours isn't going to work. Just watch me, I shot back. You're not going to get away with this. The hearing date was set, and we prepared our case. Reese was confident we had enough to not only stop the evictions, but also get Brynmore into serious trouble. The hearing was nerve-wracking. Brynmore tried to paint us as troublemakers, but we had the facts on our side, Seren testified, her voice shaking but strong about the harassment she'd endured. I played the recordings of Brynmore threatening and intimidating us. When Brynmore realized he was losing, he tried to strike a deal. He offered to drop the eviction notices if we stopped the legal action, but it was too late for that. We wanted justice, and we weren't going to back down. The judge ruled in our favor. Not only were the eviction notices declared null and void, but Brynmore was also fined for his illegal actions. He was ordered to compensate us for the harassment and legal fees. It was a huge victory. But I wasn't satisfied. Brynmore still owned the building, and I knew he'd find other ways to make our lives miserable. That's when I came up with a plan to hit him where it really hurt, his wallet. I started digging into his business practices and found out that he had a lot of shady dealings. With the help of Reese and the tenants' rights organization, we launched a full-scale investigation. We discovered that Bryn Mawr had been cutting corners on maintenance and safety regulations. He was pocketing the money meant for repairs and using it to fund his lavish lifestyle. We reported him to every relevant authority: the housing department, the fire department, and even the IRS. Bryn Mawr's world began to crumble. He was slapped with fines, inspections, and lawsuits. His reputation was in tatters, and he was bleeding money. He tried to sell the property, but no one wanted to buy a building with so many legal issues. Bryn Mawr was eventually forced to declare bankruptcy. The property went into foreclosure, and a new owner, Elunid, took over. She was everything Bryn Mawr wasn't: kind, fair, and genuinely interested in making the building a better place for everyone. Under Eluned's management, the repairs were finally made, and the building became a community again. Seren and the other longtime residents were able to stay, and we welcomed new tenants who quickly became part of our little family. As for Bryn Mawr, I heard he moved out of town, his tail between his legs. I don't know what he's up to now, and honestly, I don't care. What matters is that we stood up to a bully and won. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I wanted to give up, but seeing the smiles on my neighbors' faces made it all worth it. So, Reddit. If you ever find yourself facing an unfair landlord or any other kind of bully, remember this: you have rights and you can fight back. Don't let anyone walk all over you. Stand up, gather your allies, and make their life a living hell. Legally, of course.